Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame are essentially the Watcher's Eyes of Ascendancies, and like Watcher's Eyes, they can get very expensive. As an incredibly high variance item, there's going to be a lot that drop which aren't worth very much. If an Ascendancy that isn't worth very much is perfect for your build, then that's great. You'll get a lot of power for an Exalt or two. On the other hand, if you're looking for something like Farshot or Profane Bloom, then I guess it's time to start grinding because you're going to be spending quite a lot, with some of these sets selling for 60 or even upwards of 100 Exalts by the end of a league. Now, to go with the theme of making bosses harder and also making them provide unique chase rewards, there's a series of new Forbidden Flesh and Flame combos that allocate an Ascendancy for your class, which isn't actually available on the tree. And so far, 2 of these have been teased. 9 lives, which is very powerful but doesn't require much explanation. You get 25% recoup, and your recoup happens over 3 seconds instead of 4. So instead, in my second entry on my unique series, I'm going to be talking about Searing Purity, the Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame exclusive Ascendancy node for the Templar class. Searing Purity says 45% of chaos damage taken as fire damage, 45% of chaos damage taken as lightning damage. And immediately, I noticed a couple of very important things. But before I get into too many details about what that is, I'm going to start with a little bit of an explanation of how resistances work, in case anyone's not familiar or a little bit rusty. Resistances in Path of Exile reduce the damage you take from a type of damage, so fire resistance reduces the fire damage you take. Chaos resistance reduces the chaos damage you take. Every time you defeat Katava, he afflicts you with a status that gives you minus 30% to all resistances. Resistances will also normally cap at 75%. This means you need 135% fire, cold, lightning, and chaos resistance if you want to be fully capped. And if that sounds like a lot and you're wondering, do I really need to be capped? I mean, reducing all the damage I take by 50% is still pretty good, right? In theory, you'd be correct, but that's not really how resistances function in Path of Exile. When GGG is determining damage numbers, they assume you're going to have capped resistances. So, if you have 50% fire res, you're not taking half damage from fire. You're taking double damage from fire. If it's assumed that you cap your resistances at 75%, then if GGG wants you to take 100 fire damage, they're going to have the hit deal 400. This means that if you have 50% fire res, you'll take 200 fire damage, thus, you're taking double damage. It's also important to note that while damage over time effects cannot be converted, you can't convert your vortex to fire. Damage over time can be taken as a different element, such as how the Black Flame Ring causes your Ignite to deal fire damage, but the enemies take chaos damage. If you want to know more about Black Flame, then be sure to check out the card. And I know it seems like I've just been rambling for the last few minutes about Path of Exile mechanics, but these mechanics are very important if you want to understand how Searing Purity works and where it might benefit you. So, before I get back to talking about Searing Purity, a quick reminder that if you found this video helpful, or it's taught you something new about Path of Exile, leave a like, as that tells YouTube to show it to more people. If you want to see more Path of Exile content, then be sure to sub to the channel and ring that bell to be notified whenever I upload. On the other hand, if you're really bored and looking for something else to play before the league starts, then maybe check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts, where I talk about a variety of other titles, including a lot of indie games. For now though, what does everything I've said so far mean for Searing Purity? Well, if a game's balanced around you having 75% of a resistance, then if you have over 75%, that's incredibly powerful. This is why Melding of the Flesh is the strongest jewel in the game right now. Because it means you can have 90% max cold res and you have 90% max cold, fire, and lightning. But what if you also combine that with Searing Purity? Now, 90% of your chaos damage is split across your fire and lightning, where you have 90% resistances. Well, this is where Searing Purity goes from okay and kinda cool to absolutely amazing, because the end result is you might not need as much chaos res as you otherwise would in your build. Let's call back to that earlier example when I was talking about resistances, and say that you're supposed to take 100 chaos damage. This means the enemy is going to deal 400 chaos damage. If you have negative 60% chaos res, you're going to be taking 640 chaos damage, which is pretty bad. But what if you had Searing Purity? And what if you had 90% fire and lightning resist? Well, now the damage you're taking gets split three ways. 45% of it, or 180, is taken as fire. But because you have 90% fire resistance, you're only actually taking 18 damage. And the same goes for lightning. The remaining 40 is taken as chaos. Remember, you're still at negative 60% chaos res. So you take 1.6 times the base damage, or 64. What this means is, at negative 60% chaos res, you take 100 damage. So if you have Searing Purity, and you're using Melding of the Flesh to get 90% fire and 90% lightning resistance, you effectively have 75% chaos resistance, despite being at negative 60. And you might be saying, well, big deal, you're giving up 2 jewel sockets to just have something that you can get anyway, why not put chaos res on gear? The answer is pretty simple. Chaos resistance on gear is a suffix. But let's say you're a crystallized omniscience build. That suffix could be strength, dexterity, or intelligence, and all of a sudden you have more pen and more resistances, meaning it's easier to meet your cap for melding, and you do more damage. Or maybe you just want to be a little bit greedier with your gear. Sure, you can cap your chaos resistance, but capping out your chaos resistance costs you 4 to 6 suffixes. What if those suffixes were just damage stats? I mean, you like damage as much as the next guy, right? Alright, maybe you don't check all your flasks and all your charges and berserk in your POB, so maybe you like damage slightly less from the next guy. But every stat that you get via Searing Purity means you're essentially paying 2 jewel sockets to free up a bunch of suffixes elsewhere on your gear. And with recombinators, the top end for this is absolutely absurd. What if instead of Chaos Res on your chest, you have something like Mage Bane? Or what if instead of Chaos Res on your chest, you have Glancing Blows? You might be able to completely reconfigure your tree because you freed up stats from one place to use them elsewhere. And this is assuming negative 60% Chaos Res. What if you don't have negative 60? What if you have a little bit of incidental Chaos Res here and there, and it's at 0%? How does it look then? The enemy's still going to deal you 400 chaos damage. You're still going to take 18 fire damage and 18 lightning damage. But now, that 40 chaos is left as 40. It's not multiplied by anything, since your chaos res is 0. This way, you take 76 damage. Or, you have a 25% damage reduction to chaos. Normally, to get a 25% damage reduction, you have to get to about 82.5% max res, which will usually cost you 2 cluster jewel slots, an investment that's about comparable to the Flesh and Flame. If you already have high fire and lightning res, Searing Purity is incredibly powerful. In some ways, this does make it a little bit niche, but given how easy it is to integrate melding into your build right now, I'd say it's a pretty fair cost. And while 2 jewel sockets is going to be a fair bit of damage, it's far less punishing than giving up the suffixes to cap your chaos anyway. And I'm sure someone's going to say, yeah, but I could just die to chaos damage. And you can, but think of all the portals that you lose dying to chaos damage. Think of all the time you waste. You might not think about it in the moment, but you'd be surprised how quickly that translates to an actual tangible currency loss when you're trying to farm for stuff. So this means that Melding of the Flesh is even more of an inclusion if you're playing an Inquisitor, and it's also pretty decent on Hierophants and Guardians as well. It also means that your elemental defenses extend to chaos, so that's one less thing you can do, which means you get to fit a lot more damage onto your gear. And finally, if there's ever a situation, such as you might find in Simulacrum, where the enemies are penetrating your chaos resistance, well, this provides a defense against that too. If an enemy penetrates 15% of chaos resistance, it's only going to be increasing the portion of damage that you take as chaos. It would have to penetrate chaos, fire, and lightning to fully increase the damage that you take from its abilities. But for now, I'm going to ask a question that won't age very well. What do you think the other ascendancies get for their special nodes? We've already seen Witch, and we've already seen Templar. At least as of the recording of this video, the others remain to be revealed. So what form do you think those take? Or what sort of nodes do you want to see added to ascendancies like Shadow, Ranger, Marauder, Duelist, or Scion? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to put them down in the comments below, or join the Discord where you can ask questions, get build help, and hang out with the community. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. They're awesome, and they get to show it by having their name on screen in the credits of all my videos. So if you want to see your name here, be sure to check the link in the description. For more general gaming content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts, and if you want a water bottle or a cool shirt, I have a link to my official merch shop in the description. I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.